Hello, bonjour, and welcome to Phi Virtual. My name is Myriam Achard, and I'm Chief New Media Partnerships at Phi, PR at Phi. Thank you for tuning in with us today. We are actually experimenting a new model. As you can see, I'm not alone at the table. I have friends with me. They will introduce themselves a little bit later, but I just want to acknowledge their presence here. So to my left, I have Sandra Rodriguez. To my right, I have Toby Coffey. And at the end of the table, I have Matt Damsbo. What I should have said right at the beginning is that we are live here. For those of you who know the Phi Center, you might recognize the fact that we recreated a little bit some of the Phi Center. We are on the first floor of the building. As you can see over there, nature took back its rights. The interesting fact is that the four of us are not together in real life. We are even in different countries, in different continents. Matt is in Copenhagen. That's Toby is in London. Sandra and I are both in Montreal, but in different locations. We are all wearing VR headsets, and through our avatars, we are united today around the table. What do you guys think about that?
I think it's really good. Kind of artificial in a way, but good.
I think we kind of look our role too, so I still feel it's mad in this costume.
Okay, so since you guys already started to talk, or actually your avatars, I'm going to ask Sandra, maybe if you want to introduce yourself, tell us who you are, what type of work you do, and also why you chose that avatar.
Great. So my name is Sandra Rodriguez. I'm a director and sometimes producer of immersive and interactive content. The most recent project is called Chomsky versus Chomsky. First encounter, it was premiered in Sundance 2020. And well, I get to teach sometimes in my other life XR at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I think that kind of summarizes a little bit this froggy thing. I like to, immerse myself and enter these high-tech worlds and sometimes disrupt it, jump around, and create something funky and colorful with it. So I guess that's a way to say why I chose the frog. I don't know, French kids are called frogs from time to time. It's colorful, it's funky. There's something about it that's moving, and that's what I like about it.
Thank you, Sandra. I actually had the chance to see your latest piece in Sundance, Chomsky versus Chomsky, where AI meets VR. Fascinating piece. Congratulations on that, actually.
Thank you.
Toby, who are you? What are you doing? And why did you choose that avatar?
Hi, everybody. My name is Toby Coffey. I'm head of digital development at the National Theatre in London, where we run the immersive storytelling studio. The studio is a space where we bring together storytellers with creative technologists. So a storyteller can be a writer, designer, director. Creative technologist is, for us, somebody who understands the technology as much as they understand the art form itself, and that's really, really important because what we have is performance-led work or story-led work rather than technology-led work. The most recent project that we've had public-facing similarly had its international premiere at Sundance earlier this year. It was All Kinds of Limbo, which is a communal performance where we invite up to 20 audience members at a time into a virtual performance space. They can all see each other, representations of each other, and the experience is centered around the performance of a performer called Nubia Brandon. And it's a 10-minute musical experience. There's four costume changes, 6 or 7 scene changes, so it's very much like you feel like you're in a performance space and the audience follows the performance around the space.
Again, I had the chance to see that piece in Sundance, Toby. I danced. It's such a beautiful piece, and I think maybe it's important for us to say that the first time we met, it's actually 3 or 4 years ago in Tribeca, where you world premiere a piece called Draw Me Close, and it's for me really the first time I actually tried in VR.
Yeah, it's a very moving piece, yeah.
Very touching moment. Mats, tell us a little bit about the work you do in Copenhagen.
No. We've been cheated. We haven't heard why he chose the donut.
Sorry. The donut were effectively, I just wanted to make sure that I had a recognizable outfit so that when I come into meetings or social gatherings, people can recognize it's me straight away across the room. So hopefully I think I've done that. I mean, I'm a very keen home cook as well, so the chef's hat and the donut nods to that a little bit, I think. But yeah, hopefully it's memorable. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you, Toby.
Thank you.
Mats, your turn now, Mats.
Yes, well, I'm so glad to be here. I'm Mads Damsbo, and I'm the CEO and lead producer of Macropol, which is sort of you could call it a storytelling studio that tries to traverse between different technologies. We sort of believe that any story can be given to any medium depending on the story. But we also work a lot with creative technologists and try to immerse our audiences as much as possible using creative ways of using technology. And especially VR has been, since it came, something we worked a lot with and explored for the last 4 or 5 years, actually. And previously, or maybe most famously, we've done the Doghouse, which was a 5-person dinner table experience, and then later a couple of different performances. And lately, a dinner performance actually that was set to premiere at Copenhagen Ducks, which unfortunately was cancelled, where we also explored this idea of having co-presence between people and combining the total sensory apparatus with eating and smelling and performance design and VR to essentially become what you eat in the end. Yeah, it's a shame that we didn't get to premiere it, but this is also something we're looking forward to showing at some point again when the world opens up.
And tell us about your avatar.
Oh yes, well actually, this avatar was suggested to me, which I like, that someone has an idea of what I should look like, and it's not my self-image anymore. But I do realize that that I have, this kind of long nose, which pretty much it makes me think of my nosiness. I have this tendency to stick my nose into a lot of different things, and maybe a little bit too many things that I shouldn't stick my nose into. So I tend to be very curious and also a little bit of a mad professor in my studio, and people have to tell me to stop experimenting, but I can't. It's really hard not to.
Makes total sense, Mats, with you. I agree with that. Thank you, really, like the three of you, thank you so much for accepting this invitation. As I said earlier, it's really an experiment we are doing. Hopefully, if everything goes well, we'll have more of those sessions. But let's dive in, actually. My first question to you, to all of you, really is, what do you think that this situation we are in right now with this COVID-19 will change for VR creators, VR artists, VR producers? How will that change their way of working? Did you already think about that? Sandra, maybe?
Yeah, I think it's putting us on the edge. Again, we have to be, thinking fast about next ways of doing things. I think in the industry, it's started to, you've just mentioned festivals started to show greater and greater interest in XR experiences. The audience is there. The audience is willing to come and discover new ways of storytelling. And right when this happens, we have to cancel most of them because we have headsets that we put on, these real life heads, and that can transmit some COVID, or other kind of viruses. So suddenly a lot has been put into question. So I would say that's my take on it. I think it started to change not just because festivals are canceled, but the question mark is, are people going to put headsets on their heads and share it with the next person or the next visitor in an experience space? So it's a big question mark, but I think it's just another hurdle that XR creatives need to play with, and we're good at that. So let's see. I'm not pessimist, but it's a question.
I actually believe that in a way this is something else than a hurdle. I think it might be this quite pivotal point for us in the consciousness of how we should develop things, because if you what I realized when I've been looking through the papers is that a lot of the sort of notes that are coming on, like people that have different opinions about theater culture and filmmaking, they're starting to point to the fact that we should be looking into more virtual ways of presenting things. And this is not coming from the usual suspects, so to speak, of the XR crowd. This is coming from more or less classic established figures within the industry. And so to me, this is a sign that we're also seeing sort of change, a paradigm shift maybe, or at least this is sparking that paradigm shift that we might see more and more culture being put into virtual environments. And I do believe that we should definitely jump on that wave if possible.
Mm-hmm.
Toby, what do you think?
I definitely agree. I think it's a provocation of how we can be presenting our artwork or our performance work. I think one of the important things to remember as well is that VR is one of the components or one of the tools that we as storytellers bring to the XR environment. There's lots of other things that we use as well in terms of telling stories. And yes, there's a problem with people being worried about putting on headsets, but I think that's going to go away when we're back out. And, we actually, interestingly, we were showing all kinds of limbo at the Tate Modern in London a couple of weeks before everything kind of kicked off. And we were both disinfecting headsets. We gave people personal face masks, VR face masks to watch, so they were never actually directly touching with their face. So I think there's steps that we can do that will get people back into feeling that it's okay to put on a headset. But I think the thing, it's, and to Matt's point about it is actually a provocation for how we do things, across the board. But I think in terms of performance work, there's two things. One is we are looking at immersive storytelling and we're looking at XR. So those across different regions, but also, different methodologies. But we're very, very much talking about audiences being at home in a way that we weren't doing quite as much earlier. That was an aspiration quite often rather than a necessity. So I think this is where the real shift is happening, if that makes sense. And I think what the thing that we could gain is that all of a sudden, so actually we've done 3 broadcasts through National Theatre at Home. So that is from the archive of National Theatre Live, where we broadcast live to cinemas around the world. What we now do every Thursday is do a free broadcast on YouTube of one of the performances from the previous Anti-Live archive. And that's had over 3 million people watching that over 3 weeks, which is great. And now it also poses as the question, should we leave the living room when everyone's allowed back out? Or do we need to keep the living room now as a delivery mechanism or as a point of access for audiences? I think that's a really interesting thing to think about.
It's a very interesting question for sure.
I like to think of it also as not either or. So you've just pointed, I think, Toby, to something really important. A couple of years ago, it was all about we need to get a headset per person in their living room. Everybody's going to have one. And I think the beauty of a space like Phi Center or exhibit spaces that have innovated through location-based experiences was to think, yes, that's one way to do things, but there's also, the showmanship that comes with space. That's also important. Now we're all focused on location based. And I think what this is telling us is, guys, there's other ways to think about how you can involve people at home as well. So the balance that, what I like about when you're Mads, you're talking about a pivotal moment. I think that's a little what I mean by a hurdle, but you're right that it's more than a hurdle. It's a moment of transition, but it's another challenge. And XR creatives love challenges. So it's kind of jumping on that next challenge to think about our relationship with an audience. Right now, I'm using my hands a lot. In real life, I do, but I'm exaggerating it. I'm kind of puppeteering my frog character because I think it might look better for the people at home watching that don't have a head. So that's what I mean, just kind of working with the flow.
Yeah, but it's. I think it's a great segue to my next question. I don't know, 5 years ago, the big question for VR creators was, or even a bit less than 5 years, but when will VR gear will become domestic? Are we there with what's happening right now in the world? Do you think this is the moment that all the gear, the people that are constructing the gear, they're waiting for? Is it the moment where VR is going to become domestic? What do you think?
Well, maybe it's actually Facebook who started the whole thing. Who knows?
The ironic thing is you can't get pressed anywhere for love or money at the moment because there's no supply chain that's putting the headsets out there, and so it's the biggest irony at the moment is actually it's quite difficult for people who haven't currently got headsets to get headsets. But I think the thing that it's definitely there's a big drive there. It's tricky to know when the supply chain is going to come back. Also, I think the thing in terms of what we don't want is a lot of short-term content that's been made really quickly to get out there in this time. I think that's potentially damaging. I mean, hats off to 5-sensor. This is a really, really good thing, I think, because it's a new format and one that really works. It doesn't demand the audience is in VR, but it does give them a completely different experience and allows us to have a conversation in a way that we've not done it before. You've set up a virtual TV studio and we're broadcasting to people. We're not in the same room and we're broadcasting to people all around the world. I think that's very, very, very interesting in its own right and needs to be interrogated more by people who've got the opportunity to look into that. Is this going to be the point at which every household now gets a VR headset? I think, unfortunately, well, unless they can get the supply chains back out and then maybe people bring down price points, you could see if you were a hardware manufacturer, you'd be looking at how you could probably disrupt your existing model to actually get as many people to get headsets as possible. That would be interesting. But I think also at the same time, what you need to do is ensure that you promote the best work that's happening and we don't see an influx of loads of people making short-term VR projects.
It could be very damageable, as you said, if people are starting to produce content that's really not good quality, then it would be really bad for our medium.
Yeah, yes. I think we've had this experience a couple of years ago as well, when VR and 360 videos started to be around. The objective was so much to sell headsets that all was produced were really short, fast, easy 360 video content, and people got tired of it quite, sincerely. And so you had a couple of experiences. You could swim with sharks, you could be on a roller coaster, okay, but after a couple of tries, you're done. What the XR industry brought within the last years were experiences that you never thought of before: immersive theater, immersive dances, multi-user play, things that suddenly really changed the landscape, and it brought magic back. It brought really magic back into this immersive world. So you're right, really thinking about the content and what we're putting out there. I would love to see it not just be when you don't have access to a headset, you have access to other formats, but even play with maybe perhaps at 5-sensor in a couple of years, you're going to have panelists that when they cannot travel or be there can be present in their avatars. I'd love to see Toby, and on the next panel as a donut.
Matt, you're about to say something. Sorry.
No, I mean, no, I think I agree with Toby, but this is not going to be, unfortunately, the big adaptation point. Yeah, but I do think that we are going to see much more seeking of some digital collective experiences. These are generally things that I see, and I hear from a lot of people who are trying to see concerts online, who are now trying to see different events that they book tickets for. Is there a frog that's saying something somewhere? Is it just me?
Yeah, I think it's my microphone that's
there
doing that,
frog.
actually.
There is a frog, but
I think
it's
the
not
frog
this
has
frog
a
that
problem.
you're hearing.
Okay.
The joy of live television, if you'd like. I hear it too, and I think it's really. But it's c'est la vie.
Yeah.
Let's go on.
C'est la vie. No, but I hear this problem, and the funny thing is that the problem they have with these live experiences is that the sensation of being together at the concert is missing, right? So one of the things that they talk about is like, oh, but then I was there, I wanted to listen, but then suddenly all these, chat messages comes up, and the likes and the hearts, and it's disrupting my view of the concert, and I don't feel like I'm connected there, and I've so many associations that go body to body rather than just watching and hearing, that we sometimes underestimate the power of the body language and the presence in this. I would just encourage one who has the opportunity to sort of explore how can we better facilitate these digital communities, because it will be necessary, not just now, but in the future, for real.
So we were talking earlier, VR as an uncharted territory. We were talking with Sandra, like you were saying that XR creators are willing. So what do you think that what will XR creator take advantage? How will they take advantage of this situation? What do you think?
Well, I think it's my kind of hopeful stance is that whenever we meet in person, because there is also, joy in meeting members of this community, creators and producers in person, there is this joy that comes out of this community, and it's like a kid-like mind, we love exploring, we love trying out new things. When you hear of a new technology, the first thing that comes to mind is, oh, great, how can I try it out? And, having worked in other media, more traditional media as well, it's not something that comes up all the time. Some people love to have a skill and perfection their skill. I think XR creators' best skill is to adapt to whatever comes next, and usually take the opportunity of what I was calling before hurdles or, problems, and see them just as assets and try to work from that and create something new. So I am super hopeful about the XR community. I think it's filled with funky looking people, but funky minds as well. And, that's what's going to, bring some new forms of entertainment for the future, I'm sure. So I'm unsure about the future, but I'm sure that it's going to be fun to play in. And I swear I'm not making these noises.
Do you guys agree?
That the future will be fun? Yeah.
That's
pretty easy to agree with. I mean, we're future optimists, basically, right? I mean, otherwise we wouldn't be working with all this new technology.
Yeah, and I think...
Go ahead, Toby, sorry.
No, it's fine. Carry on.
No, please.
It was, I think, bringing that last question, the question before back together, I think actually what we will see at this point in time, rather than a mass adoption, is an influx of people looking into this area for creative. That's the kind of the change that's going to happen, and the change for good that will happen. And then I think us as established XR creators as well will mean that hopefully there's more area for potential collaboration, but also, again, new formats will come from this time. Like, we're looking at our portfolio of projects now that we've already done and seeing how we can extend our audience by taking it to the home market, as it were. And then we're also looking at completely new models for developing content that we would take out further down the line. I think one of the interesting scenarios is that there's a lessening of the social of lockdown over summer, but that might increase again as we get later into the year. And I think that's the potential where you can see slightly medium-term projects have been made. The supply chain might have come back online, etc., etc. So it might not be the next 3 months; it might actually be the next 9 months. That's actually really important in terms of more people getting to see this type of work.
Yeah,
so
I totally agree.
You guys are really optimistic, from what I understand, about the future, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It comes with a job, I think.
I love you guys. It's really great. I want to ask you one question. I'm very often asked if, like, what's the best VR piece you tried in the last 4 or 5 years you've been doing that job? Are you able to pinpoint, and I'm looking at you, Sandra, now, like, are you able to pinpoint one piece that really made you say, okay, that's why I want to do VR?
Can I name 2?
Yes, you can.
I'd say 2016 and Sundance 2016 was a piece called Irrational Exuberance. And it was very simple. It was not really a story. You were in space. You weren't told what to do. You had to discover it for yourself. And suddenly you broke out of this kind of cave-like, I don't know what it was, how to call it, milieu, and then all of a sudden you were in space. And I spent so much time just looking at what I could do with this space with no story. And it still inspired me later on when I was trying to bring new storytellers in XR or immersive world that had no idea about how it works. I would put them in that experience just to show the possibility it's something else. And then the other is a more recent one, Wolves in the Wall. Using AI and mixing it with VR, I was surprised to really follow a guy that is like an 8-year-old little girl. She's not real. She's drawn like a cartoon, and I'm following her around, and I'm caring for her. And when she turned to me and said, "Let's go tell mom," I suddenly kind of felt jumpy, and I wanted to say, "Yes, I want to go tell mom." And of course, she's not real. Her mom is not my mom, but I still felt compelled to join her in that virtual world. So these are 2 pieces that come to mind, like great examples. You forget that you're an audience member completely. You're just inside these spaces and you're taken away.
Yeah, I mean, Wolves in the Walls. Yeah, Wolves in the Walls, Sandra, definitely directed by Pete Billington. Absolutely beautiful. We actually showed it at the Phi Center in Montreal, I think last year or 2 years ago. I don't remember. So I couldn't agree more on that one. Toby.
Ooh, it's a really, really good question.
Hard.
Yeah, I actually don't know that I've got a favorite. I've probably got a list of like 10 that I would say, for various reasons, I find incredibly powerful or resonant in one way or another. I think actually, interestingly, I think one of the things that has really affected how we look at things is actually tilt brush. And actually what happens when you give tilt brush to people like set designers or even directors in terms of storyboarding. That's the bit that for me is like, wow, this makes so much sense. And I think we'd just be completely scratching the surface of that. Obviously, I've got stacks of really, really interesting projects that I like, but I don't think I've got a standout one. And that's not because there's not a great selection to choose from. It's actually, I like so many different things about different projects. And actually, somebody was saying to me from Venice Biennale just recently about how actually sometimes you prefer years rather than work, because the selection there was really interesting, or the selection there was really interesting, and people talk about periods of time as much as individual projects. So sorry, that's not a definitive answer.
It's okay. It's okay, Toby, because I know that I do have a hard time when people are asking me like to just name one, so it's fine, don't worry. Mats, what about you?
Well, I'll have to say that two of my strongest experiences, and this will go again in maybe everything that I've been searching to do since then. In Draw Me Close that I saw Toby produce, and also similarly at the same time I saw Alice, the VR play. And I think both of them have the same quality of this. Also, what Wolf in the Walls in some ways brings is this presence of a character that you experience virtually. So you are in a virtual fictitious environment, but you are then so seen by the main character that you become part of it in a way that I never thought was possible with storytelling. I mean, of course, I'd known that there was role-playing. I know there were different kinds of immersive theater, but I think, combined with my background filmmaking and understanding of sort of the visual storytelling principles that were in both Draw Me Close and in Alice, scene changes and sound design and everything sort of came together with this performance art that I was just blown away. And I really believe that this is the future in many ways, to connect the artificial intelligence presence of a character in some ways, if it can be done right. Or maybe even imagining one live performer actually performing like we are now, live to an audience in VR.
Absolutely. I mean, I think oh, go ahead, Toby.
Nope.
I was just going to react on what just Matt said, because Alice and Draw Me Close are definitely works that are just incredible. And when VR meets immersive theater, the feelings that we get can be really strong. I think
I just wanted to add that I was just going to say, by the same company, I think Horrifically Real VR, like stepping on from Alice, Horrifically Real VR for me was just amazing in terms of the levels. It's like you do the first experience, then you do the second experience, and then the way, I won't spoil it for anybody that's not seen it, but the way it just keeps evolving, and the way you see yourself as you had previously existed, I found that very, very interesting. And definitely, I mean, there's high stakes with work like that, because you have got, as with Draw Me Close, you've got live performers actually live in the space, always live performing, and that's a very expensive thing to do. But yeah, that would be one to mention in that group, I think.
Well, actually, we showed also Horrifically Real Virtuality at the Phi Center, and this was a big success. So did we did Alice also. Guys, that's it. I mean, we just spent 30 minutes talking to each other, to our avatars. I just want to remember the people that are watching us is that we are live, and each of us is in a different location. And for me, this is just incredible to realize what technology can do. Thank you, Sandra, for accepting this. You're a great team player, and thank you for saying yes right away. Thank you, Frog, Sandra.
Thank you, Myriam. It's always a pleasure. Everything that happens around this virtual space, but within the Phi Center community and friends, is always a pleasure. So game on for next time.
Toby, thank you. It's always a pleasure. I can't wait to see you in real life again and give you a real hug.
Give a virtual hug now.
And Matt, we're going to dance actually on the table, remember, at the end. Matt, thank you very much. I can't wait to discover your new piece. Hopefully it's going to be maybe later this year or the latest next year. What you guys do at Macropole is just incredible.
Thank you.
And to the people who are watching us, thank you. I repeat, this was an experiment. I hope you enjoyed. There will be more episodes for sure with different themes. And merci beaucoup et à la prochaine.
Ciao.